Hello and welcome to Mystic Chat. And in this episode, we're going to be talking about our relationships with the spirits and what that means, and we'll give you some hints on how to do it and why it's important, and things like that. So, let me introduce myself. I am Chris. For Chris Allen, I am an ordained minister with the Fellowship of Phoenix. I am also a published author. If you haven't, I'm going to do a plug. I don't do many plugs. My new book, Other World Ecstatic Witchcraft for the Spirits of the Land, is out on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, and strangely on Walmart's website. I don't even know how that happened, but sure, okay, why not? Um, I would like to introduce my co-host, Laura Gonzalez. Laura, take it away.
Hello, everybody. My name is Laura Gonzalez. I'm a minister with Circle Sanctuary. I'm a ordained priestess of the goddess tradition. I am a tarologist as my paid job. For normally, I say that as saying I'm a witch for hire. Pew, pew. And y'all love to see me do that, so now I have to do it. And I do a whole lot of other things. Amongst them, I do a podcast, and there's a whole lot of good podcasts coming in the next few months. A lot of authors are coming to Lunatic Mondays, so you can find it Lunatic Mondays on Facebook, or you can find CSMP, the Circle Sanctuary Network podcasts. Since we're plugging shit and shit, look, take it away, my friend.
Hi, everybody. My name's Luke. I am a columnist over at The Wild Hunt. I am a devotional polytheist who works. I used to say that I work with the Greek and Norse pantheons, but people keep sneaking in around the corners, so I don't really know if I can say that exclusively anymore. I'm a magical jack of all trades and do not have nearly as many credentials behind my name as these two. But I'm super excited about our topic today. This is something that is like really central to my practice. And I really love talking about it with other people. So Chris, like we were talking about relationships with the spirits, and I'm sort of wondering like what sort of things that includes for you.
So, uh, gosh, where to begin? When I was seven, just kidding. Um, so for me, a long time ago, one of my teachers said to me, your psychic ability, your magical ability can only go so far. So, if you want to go deeper into the mysteries and magic, you have to work with spirits because they see things and know things and can do things obviously that we can't. And that makes sense to me. And I am a hardcore pagan. Like, um, I don't even call myself. Well, I do call myself a polytheist, but a pagan, like Earth and all that stuff. And one of the things that I really resonated with was having a connection with the gods and the spirits of the land and the ancestors and things like that. And I'm a healer, and when you go in the mindset of a healer, you have to care. That's why in hospital it's called care. And so that being said, that's how I view it. Okay, that's how I view the universe. And so I really wanted to care and have a relationship with the gods, the ancestors, the fae, the elves, the Norns, all those things, because honestly, I fell in love with them, not because I had to, not because it was making me powerful, but just because, by the storytelling, the lore, and by putting my hands in the dirt and feeling those energies, I just want to be a part of it. And one of the things I know, if Ruby Rose were here today, she'd agree, is that The elves and fae can really tell the difference between people who want their magic and people who actually care about them, you know, and really care versus a superficial, I think it'll be cool to have a fairy around, you know. So, you know, and I talk about this in my classes and in books and things about, yes, you can pick up a book and say a conjuration and conjure something. Absolutely, that's what the Goetia is. It's we're conjuring primal spirits. But when you have a relationship and you know them and they know you, it's different. Like I rarely do an incantation or to conjure things. I just well, if you were in my home, you'd see the ancestor altar, the dragon altar, the psychopomp altar, the skull altar, this altar, that altar, because I want these energies to be around me. So mm, by having a relationship with the spirits, that's what that means, you know. And one thing I wanted to add to that is basically if you go to here's how I see a relationship with the spirits. If you have a friend and you don't really talk to them except if you need something, they'll probably help you. And then you don't speak to that friend for like 4 months or the next woman, and you ask for something again, and this is getting old, and they quit giving you things or helping you. But if you have a relationship and you speak to them and you have an altar to them or a sacred space and you just and you get to know each other. So when I would talk to that friend, I'm like, hey, can you help me find a new job? I'm like, yeah, of course, you're my buddy, I love you, yeah, let me help you. So that's also why I think it's important to have that relationship with the spirits. So it does have an emotional quality for me, but it also has a very practical thing. What are your thoughts, Luke?
Oh, you know me, I have too many thoughts. So yeah, I mean, I'm really influenced by both Norse and Hellenic thoughts about how relationships work, right? And both of those have sort of the idea of gifting, right? I give you something and you give me something, and that action in and of itself is creates the space for our relationship to grow, right? And sometimes that gift is a gift of my time and attention. Sometimes that gift is a gift of um food at my house, right? That's how I understand relationships in general at this point. That's how I understand my relationships with my friends, is like we spend time on each other, and because of that we have a connection that we both draw on. um but I was one of the things that made me really think about this, right, is that I was talking to somebody about like my religious life, and this person is not pagan, right? And they were talking about how um like for them they just really didn't get religion, and like how it was so like impersonal and transaction based. And I was like, no, it's like my entire understanding of everything that I do is that I have relationships with people.
Mhm.
um Sometimes those people do not have bodies, or need to borrow one if they want to use one. But uh they're still people, and our relationship is how I map out the whole world around me. Um, so that's I don't know. I do want to hear more about like specific relationships, I think. And like how different kinds of relationships are different. I think for instance for me, like relationships between myself and like the divine versus like myself and like ancestors are super different.
Mhm.
But
Yep.
first, before we go there, I want to talk to Laura. Like, Laura, how are you coming into this? Uh, I
You
get it.
know, when you first because I've got to let you into behind the scenes, people. Luke suggested this topic for today. So when they did that, the first thing that came to mind was define spirit. You know, because like, what is spirit, right? Like, I grew up. I've said this before to you folks. I grew up with a father who was a New Ager when being New Ager was new. I'm a 70s child, so it was all new to people, you know, like, oh, spirit and the divine and this and that. And I'm sorry, I'm tangled up here with the headphones in my earring. There you go. Spirit pulling away. So I grew up without knowing the term for it in a very new age slash animistic way. So my father used to tell us everything vibrates, everything vibrates, everything vibrates. And he was a Catholic New Ager, which is like half of Mexico. And he used to say, you know, everything vibrates because everything has God on it.
Mm.
And for him, saying God is like for me saying spirit. So I grew up believing that everything has that spark of the divine, right? And then now that I'm older and I'm, I guess, polytheist, but at the same time, I see the God, I'm a priestess of the goddess. So to me, goddess and the feminine divine is it. And everything is touched, everything is made of that essence. So I strongly believe that everything that exists, everything, no excuses, has spirit, life within. But I don't see the spirits as okay. So it's like a little bit like a monotheistic way of thinking about it. Like, okay, so the spirit of the goddess is on everything, but at the same time, there are facets of the goddess that are the different separate deities and spirits and entities and energies and etc. So in that token, I truly believe on working with a certain deity and having, as you were saying earlier, a relationship. You know, it's not like Chris said earlier, you know, like a friend that you never talk to, and then you know you always get that inbox like, hey, how you doing? And then you be like, what you need, because you
I know. It's
haven't
always
talked to
something.
me in forever, and now suddenly you're like, hey, so you need something. I work with Goddess Fortuna, look, and what you said is the basis of working with Fortuna is gratitude.
Mm.
And it is a daily exercise of gratitude. So it's like I give you thanks. I don't pray to Fortuna for things. I pray to her to give thanks for everything that is. So there are facets, in my opinion, of spirit, you know, in different spirits. I think God created man and man returned the favor, right? So in that token, there are different concepts of spirit for different people who believe that you can conjure a spirit or do a work of voodoo or that kind of stuff. And I'm very happy that people can do that. I don't see myself doing that kind of work, or that's not a concept that I believe on. I'm not been ranting for too long now, so I hope I answer your question somewhere in there. But let's move on to what's the next topic or question.
um, so one of the things for me, and you know, a lot of people ask me all the time about the different ways I work with the spirits, and the first thing is that I believe in the multiverse, and so it's really simple for me to believe in the goddess and the creator, and Allah, and the gods, the Norse gods, the Egyptian. My brain is on board with all of it. Um, that being said, if you are conjuring spirits in the sense of I'm conjuring like old school medieval Sultan, the Key of Solomon, conjuring those spirits, so like the angels, the demons, and the elemental spirits, the planetary spirits. Um, I think that is a different skill, and you do have to know. Well, you have to know the basics of the words of power, the conjurations, things like that. The reason is because in order to grab those spirits' attention, you uh, need to connect to that current of power. You know, so that being said, do you have to do it that way? And you go, you don't, but that's the easiest way um, that I know of. However, when you have to switch and go from the Jewish Kabbalah to heathenism and things like that, or to the Celtic magic, I don't think you have to do any of that. I think um, what you have to do is that you have to give offerings, exactly what Luke just said. And some of it's a peace offering, like, hey, I want to get to know you. It's kind of like um, in the Lakota tradition, if I want a spiritual leader to do a healing for me or a sweat lodge for me or something, I would give him some tobacco. I wouldn't even ask. I would just show up. Here's some tobacco. That's funny. He'd be like, "Why are you giving me hot sauce?"
Did you bring chips with
But
that? Did
anyway,
you bring frijoles with it?
exactly. And then I would ask after I give the offering, and so it established a connection that way. Either way, hey, you still have to connect. But I think how you do it is completely different. And what are your thoughts, Luke? I see the gears turning up there.
Yeah, I think that some of what you're talking about, Chris, for me is really about the different kinds of spirits and what they want or need.
Yep.
Again, this is going to part of the thing that I really love about this conversation is that it really highlights how we all interact with the world differently, right? Like Laura's understanding of like the goddess and her presence and everything versus like a more like traditional goetic stance
Mhm.
versus like me being like, I'm at the bar, who wants a drink?
Right, right,
Like
right.
but for me, my understanding is that like with anybody, right, people have preferences about how you talk to them. I was reading something in the business world the other day about how like people who come from Israel and people who come from Japan are have a really hard time talking to each other because the rules for politeness are so different.
Interesting.
Mm.
um and for me, I understand that as being sort of a thing with spirits too. Like some spirits are going to want like you to be really formal, to follow the rules. There are rules, we have the rules, they're here for a reason. Follow the rules, show that you are willing to do the work um to actually place the call correctly. um and then some spirits are going to be, I mean, your mileage may vary. Some spirits are going to be like, hi, I've been on your couch for the last 3 years. Nice of you to finally notice,
Uh-huh.
dingbat. Give me a drink. um, uh, so yeah, I think that a good way to start with spirits that you don't know is always to like be respectful, do a little bit of research, figure out what it is they like, and give that to them.
Mhm.
Um, I will say that I have had situations where I've done that and they've just been like, cool, I see you. Thanks. We're not going to do this. Please don't call me again. Um,
Oh,
yeah. Um, and I mean, that's not been, that's been really kind and really like clear of them for me. A lot of that was from when I was first getting into paganism, like figuring out things, and was approaching people from closed traditions.
Mm.
And I got a couple of people who were like, cool, either you learn how to do this properly, by which I mean go find a teacher and then have them call me on your behalf, or don't call me. Um, which, yeah, if there's one thing that has like really like shaped my understanding of magic, of spirits, of paganism in general, it's experiences like that where I show up and what I want to happen doesn't. Something
Mhm.
unexpected happens instead, because that lets me know that I'm working with something person shaped that isn't just going to be what my brain is trying to tell me. So that's
Mm.
my thought on that. Laura, you look like you've got thoughts.
I
No.
do, because I'm fortunate enough to work with deities that are known as being tricksters, right? And I have been told many times not to gloat about that. So I'm not gloating, I'm just sharing information. Fortuna and Mercury, they are the tricksters. And those are kind of like my main working deities, right? And then I have the whole Mexica Tenochca philosophy behind me. But what I found funny about what you were saying earlier, look, that sometimes they say no, or sometimes they say learn how to speak to me correctly or whatever. I have always talk about Mercury and have a relationship with Mercury as in daddy, like you're my daddy and he's my daddy, and that. And then when people are suffering through Mercury retrograde, my close friends, I will be like, you want me to talk to dad about you, like put a good word about you with my dad, and so it's very much, I guess, because I grew up without a father. Oh, so I guess it really came up as that kind of relationship. And with Fortuna is like literally like she's the queen and I'm the subject, and here I am to do whatever. I am here to say thank you and then to let go, because she will turn that wheel and all I can do is just hang in there. Um, but there is also other spirits or facets of the goddess or deities that, I guess, because of the nature of my works that I do, they come and go, and sometimes there has been like with Hecate. I had an amazing experience last year where she tapped me like, hey, I need you to do this one thing for Chicago. And then when the thing was done, she's like, okay, bye. And I bought a statue and everything. And I'm like, maybe she wants an altar. And she's like, nah, we're good. Thanks for the statue, but bye. And the most amazing one where I had to agree with you, look, that is not something that, and I flip flop with this every 5 minutes, but right now it's like, yes, I believe they are entities that are from outside our brain, mind, understanding. Because for a long, long time, I saw defined as the one Mexican who didn't like the Virgin of Guadalupe. And I used to actually dislike the icon, and I used to be very ignorant and rude about it. I used to be very ignorant and rude about the Virgin of Guadalupe because I consider her to be a tool for colonization.
Mm.
And thank you, Goddess, I educated myself, and my ignorance was slowly uh, polished away. And one time, when I was very close to stop being ignorant towards her, a friend of mine's daughter got sick. And I asked I asked my friend, can I pray for your daughter? Can I send good energy to your daughter? And she said yes. And I thought, well, healing, I'm gonna ask Kuan Yin. And the image that put herself right in front of me was the Virgin of Guadalupe. And Mind you, my friend is from Spain. So this is even more bizarre because I'm a Mexican praying for a Spanish girl, and the icon that appears is the Virgin of Guadalupe, whom I've been accusing my whole life of being a colonizer. So that was something that left me, you know, like really thinking for a really long time. And we did the work. I had to print an image because I'm the one Mexican that don't have an image of her. And we did the work, and then that was it. And then the years have gone by, and this last December, a candle with her image basically jumped into my shopping cart.
Mm.
So you don't have to agree with everything all the time. And when they need you to do something, they need you to do something, and you better do it. That's my opinion. And I think we have grown into a respectful relationship. I've learned more about her. I know who she is now. She's more of a solar entity than it is of a, subjugated mother and all the stuff that the colonizers told us about. So it is, every relationship is unique. And as you were saying, some are good and forever, and some are like, I've been here on your couch for 3 years. Thank you for noticing. And some are like, hey, can you give me a ride because I need this? And once we get to that destination, they're like, bye.
Yeah, some of them are super complicated, and I'm because I've also like I also have deities who I think of as like parental, right? Or like uh in many different sorts of ways. And I've been thinking a lot about how, as we try to talk about our relationships with spirits, we try to use words for our that we use for our relationship with people, even though it doesn't really necessarily always map, right? It doesn't always work. Like if I talk about, like I'm doing ancestry research right now, if I talk about my great grandma Lila, I know exactly who she is. I never met her, but she was my great grandma, right? Like that's a very clear relationship. Um, if on the other hand, a spirit shows up in my life and is like, yeah, we're close. There's some teaching that I can give you. It's kind of a relationship that feels like family, but it's kind of not. Like I might be like my aunt, um, uh, just to sort of like try to explain what that feeling feels like, to give it a thing to be called. Um, but I don't know if it actually makes sense, right? I don't know if it actually like works. And a lot of the time, like I definitely, because I'm really close with Loki, right? When I first started working with Loki, I was like, what are you? Like, I know all these people who call you dad. I know all these people who call you like uh uncle or teacher. Like, what are you? And he was just like, you want a name? You're not getting one. Um,
Oh my God. You know, so I've been working with all kinds of different spirits for years and years and years and years. And one of the biggest things is, for those of you out there who are like, well, tell us the secret, tell us how we do it, tell us how we throw the bones and all of a sudden someone appears, and by the way, that rarely happens. What I want to tell people, if you are trying to work with spirits and things like that, the first thing I would ask you to ask yourself is, what's your spiritual practice and what's your spiritual goal? So for me, it's teaching, it's healing, it's also, I want to evolve. I want to know more. I want to become educated spiritually, but then I want to share. And but you don't have to have the same thing as me. So once you have that kind of idea about your path, what are the spirits available on that path? For example, I follow heathenism. I follow Native American Lakota traditions, ceremonial magic, and there are certain spirits that are already there for you. Like, for example, the gods and goddesses, your own personal ancestors. And if you've been paying attention to me at all, everybody knows it's all about the ancestors for me. And I think that's the easiest to conjure and to call, because it's your family, it's your blood, and they're very forgiving. One of the things I also wanted to say is, if you're into the land spirits, the fairies, the elves, things like that, walk into nature. And I don't mean necessarily a park, but after you become or advance, a park will work. Go into nature, a forest preserve, a desert, a mountain, whatever, and just be there and feel the energy. And for those of you who are like, how do you do that? How do you feel the energy? And you know that feeling when you walk into a room and you're like, ooh, this feels weird, or this feels bad, or this feels good, or I'm happy. Take that idea and just be in nature, or a cemetery, or a temple, or a church, or whatever, and feel. Because I am a firm believer, our heart, our intuition is what is one of the very first thing that teaches us how to have experience with the an experience with the spirits. Oh. um, and then go from there. And I can give you all types of shamanic journeys and meditations and stuff like that. But what's tangible for you? What's what's ahead of you? Does that make sense?
It does a lot. And I think one of the most important things that you mentioned right now is, what does it feel like for you, right?
Exactly,
For
exactly, exactly.
Because it's like with the psychic abilities, like I grew up with the psychic abilities. I didn't ask for them. I didn't dislike them, like them, or anything. To me, being a psychic is like having curly hair. It's there, right? But I am a firm believer that you can learn that you
Mhm.
can build a muscle, that you can become as good as you can if you work it, if you exercise it. So I tell people, for me, the most bizarre the thought, the most unlikely, the more accurate it is for my psychic when I'm seeing something that has nothing to do with me. Um, and case in point, I could be looking at a three of coins. That means working. And the thought that comes is like, is your cat okay? And it has nothing to do one thing with the other. But then I say that to the querent and they're like, oh my God, my cat just passed away or something like that. So I know the bizarre thoughts are my like super accurate. I also know I get goosebumps
Mm.
or warm. I get warm. Especially when I do like house cleansings and when I'm near cleansing a person, I can feel the temperature change or get goosebumps. That's what it feels for me. So learn what it feels for you. And once you have proof to yourself, oh, I've done this 7 times and 5 out of 7, I felt this. So that's your telltale sign, for lack of a better word. And from that, then exercise it. Then put yourself in the situation, like Chris was saying, go to the land, go to spirit, go to the water, etc. And I want to say something real quick before I pass it to Luke, but I am reading on the chat a lot of people that work with ancestors, and I love that. I love, love, love. So, two things about working with ancestors: we cannot escape the fact that we grew up in a world where the predominant religion is Christianity. And the idea is that when someone dies, they go straight to heaven, they get a harp, and they get wings, and they become angels. So don't forget that if a person was a good person when they die, they're still going to be a good spirit. If a person was a rude or a bully or a misogynistic person when they die, they're going to continue being that. That is my 2 cents. I don't work with ancestors the whole year. That's, I think, very ingrained of me being Mexican. Like Day of the Dead slash Samhain time. That's when you work with ancestors. That's what works for me. But you do you, boo. And but the thing is, don't forget that ancestors sometimes they're not gonna answer because they were a bully in life, so they will not answer in death. And allow yourself to be adventurous and let the ancestor that want to come through and ask them who they are, and you will learn amazing things. Don't be afraid, and also let your imagination help you a lot, because it's not that you're imagining it. As Luke said, you know it comes from outside, but imagination is the vehicle for the information to come through.
Thank you
So
for saying that. I was going to say that, so thank you for saying that. So to reiterate, this is important. If you think you're making it up, you are, but that's okay. You're supposed to, because the imagination gives the spirits and the energies form in your mind.
Yeah.
It
Patrick Dunn
form.
has this really great quote that said, "The imagination is the sense engine of the soul,"
Yeah,
and I love that.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, Laura, I want to jump in too, on your point about like how it feels for you. Couple of things come up for me there. One of them being that like this might be controversial. I don't know. I don't know if this is
No,
controversial.
on this show, no.
Uh, you don't have to do magic to be a pagan.
Yep.
You because when I was but a wee pagan, um, I had this terrible feeling that I was going to like reach out to the spirits and I was going to be bothering them and they
Mm.
were not going to want to interact with me. And I was going to be the only pagan who didn't have like a vibrant relationship with the deities and the ancestors. And I was just going to be like the annoying kid in middle school who just sort of like tags along after the big kids and it's like, you're super cool. Um, and like that would have been okay. Um, I know that there's a lot of talk in pagan spaces about like how to tune in your God phone or like how to have better reception or how to like interact with the spirits better. Um, but I also know that there are a lot of folks who aren't given to that or it doesn't work for them or it bores them. Um, and they can still have relationships and like do work with the spirits without being able to like do shamanic trance, I think. um Sometimes that shows up for me as I'm old school. I get signs and portents, so like weird coincidences that just happen to go my way in a very specific situation. Or um I work with Hermes, sort of to match your Mercury. I work a lot with Hermes, and for a while there, the way he would say hello is to make sure that when I was coming up to my bus stop, I watched the bus go past me. Um, no matter when I left, no matter when I got there, no matter how careful I was about time, just drove past me. I was never late for work, but eventually I ended up having to be like, listen, I love you. Thank you. Please stop. I'm very stressed. And like I was more able to catch my buses after that. Um, but sometimes it shows up like that. Sometimes it just is not going to be something that you notice. That isn't something that doesn't mean that the gods aren't there, that they or the spirits don't care about you. Um, it just means that it works differently for you.
Well,
And that doesn't make
I think that's very important to say, because there's a reason. There's a reason there are so many different magical and spiritual paths. Whatever works for you. Like, I like heathenistic traditional witchcraft and ceremony magic. I like the ritual. I like the cauldron. I like the broomstick. I want to set crap on fire. I want to do all that stuff. Jump around and scream. Um, Funny little side thing. I actually knew a priestess who her magical name was a shriek. I loved her. But anyway, speaking of screaming, but other people they want to sit in a a room by the fire, light a candle, and speak to spirits in that way. Both are fine, both are different, but both have similarities. Whatever you, whatever grabs your goat, I should say. Oh my God, I just had a picture of Loki and the goat.
Goats grabbed him.
Yep. But anyway, so I'm not sure that makes it harder for people or 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 easier because it can be overwhelming to say, "Hey, I'm brand new. Where do I begin?" You know, but going back to where I started at the beginning is what do you like? What path are you? And and one thing I will say about initiations, no, you don't have to be initiated to be with the goddess or the god or the spirits or the ancestor. However, one of the benefits of aligning yourself, let's just say aligning versus initiation, aligning yourself with the group is that you have access to those spirits because you learn how to connect. So there's that word again, connection. You learn how to connect to their flow of magical thought and energy. Excuse me, and energy. Um, I actually think that sometimes you can read a few books by a particular author and you start to see how they think, how they work, how they do things, and you're attaching yourself. This may sound frightening. You're attaching yourself to their energetic magical spirits to some degree, you know, because, like for example, and this isn't a plug or anything, but a lot of my books talk about going someplace, either a graveyard, nature, wherever, and putting yourself into a trance or observing or doing a guided visualization. But that's how I do it. Other people will sit in front of a magical circle and say like 25 minutes of conjurations. And I can do that. I just like, no, listen, let's cut to the chase. Hey, spirit, are you coming or not? um, when I met a hoodoo practitioner from New Orleans, and we were talking about this, and she goes, "You know how we conjure spirits in the South?" He says, "You look, you raise your hand, you take a deep breath, and you say, 'Y'all come.'"
Mhm.
And spirits come. And I thought that was the coolest thing because at that point I was learning 25 minutes of conjurations and I thought, well, crap, I'm gonna do that.
That is beautiful. And I think that kind of puts a cherry on the cake and it summarizes that each individual has a very unique and individual relationship with the spirits. And kind of what Amy was, Ruby Rose was saying the other day, that when Thor came to her, it looked like the actor who played Thor on the movie. I think is based on that. It's based on how you relate to people, how you relate to people with bodies, or how to relate with other people. And it makes sense that Thor was what is on the collective unconsciousness of humanity, looking like the actor. I can't remember the name.
Chris
Chris
Um,
Hemsworth.
Hemsworth.
and then Loki, like the other super cute actor. And I know that's not the same Loki that we all. I don't mean to offend anybody that worships Loki, but in the collective unconsciousness of humanity for the last 5 years, it has been those two actors. So, for someone that is not deeply in a relationship with Thor or Loki, such as Laura, I'm not calling anybody, but if you want to come, you're all welcome. Um, it's did I just did something extremely stupid? I hope not.
No.
But that is how they will present. And then just the same as like with disembodied entities or ghostly appearances or whatever. Um, just be polite. Just be nice. Like you will be with a person, like you will be with a person that is in front of you. It's just that common decency, I guess.
One of the things that I actually had pretty good teachers in the beginning who taught me, I already knew how to have an open heart, but they really like drilled it home. Like, okay, so these are conjurate. If you ever look at the conjurations of the old grim wars of from the Renaissance and Middle Ages, I think they were, and I'm just guessing here. I think they were afraid of the spirits because when they called Diana, who is my patron goddess, I love her above all things, and I'm reading this conjuration to summon Diana. I'm like, oh, this is cool. It says, Diana, under penalty of a burning eternally in hell, appear before me, or else I will send demons to destroy you. And I'm like, what the hell? And I'm reading this, and then um incantation after incantation was threatening the spirits. And my teacher showed me this because he says, I'm showing you because this is what they did historically, but never, never threaten a spirit. Ever. The only time you ever have to threaten a spirit is if you're actually having physical harm, not emotional harm, not I'm afraid blank could happen. No, if you are in harm's way, yes, say, please stop hurting me or else I will do something. But always be kind to the spirits. But, I think in the Middle Ages and Renaissance, because it was one of the things that people don't realize is those old ancient conjurations were written by priests. They were written by priests because I think they didn't have anything to do in the monastery after dark. I don't know, but they thought that all spirits were for demons anyway, so it's okay to threaten them. And I mean, granted, I haven't ever seen a modern person do that, but I'm just saying, if you ever, just for fun, say, let me look at old spirit conjurations, that's what you see. But um, I know it sounds dumb, but you catch more flies with honey, And I will say, one of the last things I want to say is, every time I ask a spirit to come, they come. Sometimes they come and say, "Yeah, you need to talk to someone else. I'm not for you," but they come. The reason they come is because it's it's in my energy, it's in my aura, it's in my heart that I let's be friends, let's be cool. I want to hang out with you and get to know you, and I'm genuine, and at, at least I hope they understand that I'm genuine and things like that. Um, I rarely have a problem with spirits showing up. So,
Yeah,
what's your thoughts, Luke?
I think I've got 3 thoughts there, Chris. One is that I can definitely think of some things to do in a monastery after dark. 2,
Draw a circle, find a skull.
2 is that I think there's a big difference, and I really want to underline it, between don't be an asshole to people you don't know and do enforce your own boundaries.
Absolutely.
Right? Like, I have run into spirits that will push you, and a lot of the time they will push you just to see if you will push back. But same rules apply to spirits for me in relationships as do with anybody else. Like, know what you want, know what you are willing and not willing to do, and make sure that they don't pass that line. Um, so for me, like if I was dealing with a spirit that was like emotionally or like spiritually damaging me, I wouldn't necessarily like break off a bottle and say you want to go, but I would definitely be like, okay, we're done here.
Yeah.
Um, and three, I wanted to like pull out a question that we have from our audience, which is, do you ever have certain spirits who don't like working with each other? Um, Short answer is for me, yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Uh, Long answer is that I understand spirits as being like types of people, right? Um, just like there are certain types of people who don't really like each other or don't work well together. Um, I understand that there are also spirits who have that same sort of vibe. Sometimes for me, I run into that in like pantheons where like it's really clear like there are stories about why these people don't get along. Um, Sometimes it's just sort of a thing. Sometimes it's just like we're not gonna put you near each other. We're just gonna play separately. Um, but I wanted to get all. I know we're about to wrap up, so I wanted to make sure that we got all that in. Are there spirits that you have run into, you two, that don't
Um,
work well together?
well, yeah. I mean, for example, um, one of the things is I wouldn't ever have a demon work with the Fae. It's just it cannot. It's a two different thoughts and two different traditions. However, let's be clear: all the different spirits are very aware of each other. Of course they are. Um, and I try to honor, like for example, on my god altar, I have Diana, Asclepius, and Frere, and someone told me, you know, the heathens and Romans were always fighting. I'm like, that was literally 2,000 years ago. You think they've evolved by them, but they actually get along just fine. You know, um, I think that sometimes people's prejudices that come out. So, for example, if you for some reason don't like the Egyptian gods, and you say, no, don't put the Egyptian gods with the Roman gods. They hate each other. That's not true. For you, that may be true, and that's okay for you. Um, Lord, do you have any
I
spirit?
have never experienced that. I was very, very new to understanding Mercury and Fortuna when I bought the altar, the statues for their altar. And I just paid attention, like, are you guys going to be okay together on the same altar? They're both Roman. They came into my life in completely different ways at completely different times. But then I had the not very smart idea to say that I was going to buy statues and build an altar, and then they didn't let me sleep for the next 10 days until the statues arrived. Thank you very much, guys. And then when I set up the altar, then I was able to sleep again. What I will say is everywhere I read that Mercury loves climbing plants. He loves ferns. He loves vegetation. And I put him on a window where I had this huge climbing plant, which he proceeded to kill within like 3 days, the whole plant. Then I bought him a fern. He killed the fern. Then I bought him a spider plant, which you could almost like step on those and they will not die. And that spider plant hanging there for like a week, but it was like ready to die, so I removed it. So my Mercury, the one that lives here, don't like plants, and I find that unique because anywhere else that you read, oh yeah, plants and climbing plants, and he's like, nah, I'm just gonna kill him.
Now, does he like plants to eat? Like, is it that kind of liking plant?
It's
I
delicious.
don't know. I put flowers on their altar, pretty little like months and chrysanthemums and stuff like that, and they love those. I have roses the other day, and the roses were okay. It's just green plants or climbing plants that supposedly are the ideal for him. He's like, nah, I'm just gonna kill him.
You know, it's interesting because whenever I hear that, I'm like, yeah, yeah, yeah. Maybe there are climbing plans for you and your connection with Mercury, but I have thoughts about that, but I think it's a whole different show. Um, you know, one of the things I want to leave you guys with is um, if you want to learn about the spirits and work with them, first of all, just like I said, think about your reasoning. I'm not going to say you have to have a great reason. No, you can just experiment and have a good time. But think about your spiritual path and what that means, and read about it, research, ask questions, work with people. But I think the best thing to do is go out and do it. You know, like if you're worried about what happens if I conjure something that's going to harm me, to be honest, as long as you have if you're relatively healthy, I mean, I think we all have stuff going on in our lives, but as long as you have a strong aura, you really don't have a whole lot to be worried about. You know, even can I give you an extreme example? And can I get criticized for this with people because they say, "Oh, you're supposed to have these charms, you're supposed to have these protections, and blah blah blah." It's like I think that's all fear based because many people can just go and call the gods, call the ancestors, call the fae. I mean, granted, I'm not gonna say, "Hey, it's okay to tear up my home and scare the cat." I'm not saying invite the crazy, but Luke said earlier, have boundaries, and you know when you have and when you have the boundaries, sometimes it's implied, meaning, "Hey, welcome to my home." But it's also implied if someone tells me, "Hey, welcome to my home. Don't pee on the furniture." You know, it's implied. Nobody has to tell me that. It's implied. Um, if you do feel like, "Hey, this spirit doesn't feel comfortable, it feels very weird, I don't like it," I would suggest politely saying, "Hey, thank you for coming. I'm gonna in this ceremony," and somehow gracefully say goodbye. "Thank you for coming, but it's time to go." If you ever feel like, "Oh my God, this feels threatening. I don't feel good about this," you can at that point, I think, and you guys may have a different take, command them to leave. And how I command them to leave, it's just basically firmly say, you know, "Go now." And usually that does the thing. If it's core involved in that, then it's a whole nother show. What are your thoughts, Laura? I saw your hand.
On that token, always to remember that is a cohabitation, not a possession. So it is a cohabitation. Even when they come within, you can hear their voice, but you can hear your own voice. It's not like you get lost. If you get lost, then my friend, you're having
That's a whole
other,
nother show.
that's a whole another new show. And I'm not a doctor, so I'm not going to tell you what I think it is. But most importantly, what you just said, Chris, when you're not comfortable with them, when they are being unpleasant, and this I learned not many years ago, you are the three-dimensional entity on a three-dimensional world. This is your realm. You are royalty here. They are from a different dimension, and if they are being unpleasant, you can just tell them, no, thank you, bye. Politely, there's the door. And if you have to go and open the door and tell them to leave, and it works.
Luke, thoughts?
I think that
Closing
we've talked
thoughts?
about I think we've talked about all sorts of stuff. I think that there's been lots and lots of really good thoughts. Yeah, I think that what's really important here for me is like, for me, a reason to call a spirit is because you want to, you like them. Um, I've definitely like reached out to spirits in the past just because, I mean, basically doing the like, I really like you, I really like your stories, I really want to like learn more about you and get to know you better. Um, and a reason to tell a spirit to get out is because you want to. Um, uh, and that, I think you're right. I think that does work pretty solidly. Like I've had deities, so spirits that I think of as much, much bigger than me in the past, where I've been like, cool, you're in a year's timeout. Don't speak to me until the year's over. Thank you. Goodbye.
Right.
And they've respected that. Uh, Now, I'm not going to say that year and day later they weren't like, "Hi, the year's up. How are you doing?" But you can set your own boundaries. Like you are just as empowered in your relationships as anybody else is. Um, and I think something that gets not as focused on in this sort of stuff, because I know that people talk about like power, being able to do things, being able to like enact stuff, but for me the reason to have relationships is about joy. Like, what brings you happiness?
Yeah, yeah.
who who do you like having around? um so yeah, that's my watchword.
Awesome. I love it. All right. So we are, I think, past the hour, which is good. That means we're having a great conversation. I want to thank everyone for being here today. And don't forget that we are on YouTube and we are on, what else? iTunes and Spotify. And if you haven't liked our page, like our page, The Mystic Chat. And thank you. And we shall talk to you